Hey, what's up, y'all? I couldn't think of a better way to get a video, especially after it's been a long while since I made a video, by yawning. It was either the yawn. I don't know if y'all heard it. I tried to muffle it. It was either that or, yeah, what it is, boy. What it is, boy. What's up, y'all? It's been a while, I know, but I thought before go ahead and hit the sack, get some shut eye. Then I go ahead and make this video because I finally got something worthwhile harping about, and it's not like, oh hell, there's plenty to harp about, but something that's worthwhile not only harping about but putting on YouTube. That's a different story because I'm pretty sure I've told y'all this before that there'll be times that I'll actually make videos, but they'll never make it to the tube because I delete them because I decide, I have to determine if it's something worthwhile. Ugh. If it's something worthwhile, ranting about, I dare even say bitching about, or if it's just something that, or if it's not. And I said a lot of ideas, a lot of opinions of mine don't make it any farther than this camera. They don't make it on the tube. But anyway, I try to make this as quick as I can. So, General Tito just made a video about basically his humble opinion of the so-called black community as far as what we know the current state that not only it's in but it's been in at least since the 1970s. And someone you know posed the question to him if whether or not if there's anything salvageable of it, if the black community is worthwhile saving or let alone dealing with. And I too have been presented with this question in the regard, even though I definitely have my own personal answer, which I'll give a little later. But some of y'all who know me already know what that answer is, and it's not what you think. But let's just use that as a pop quiz, and while I ramble on, I'll give you an idea to the answer as far as what it is, and it's not what you think. But just take a wild guess or conjure up a wild guess while I talk more in depth. So I'm looking at promotion at my job, or the potential for promotion at my job, where I'll be making, at least, somewhere around 20 G's more than what I'm making now, which I'm making basically, for a Memphis nigga, for an ex-Memphian such as myself, I'm making bank. I'm good with what I'm getting. And I'll be even better if I get this position. And since I've had my interview and everything, and I've been talking to a few of my coworkers about this position that I have the potential to get. I'm just a candidate right now. I've been seriously considering prioritizing what am I going to do for shelter. Because I don't know if I've expressed this, but I live in a group home. I've been in this group home for about 3 years now. Basically since I've been out here in Colorado. Because y'all probably heard I'm pretty sure I told y'all about the story about them two Memphis jokers who basically fucked me over. But to the greater good, because ever since we parted ways, my life has done a complete 180. So there's some justice in the universe. Too bad it just doesn't see me fit to have any ordeal of romance, because I like to think of myself as a hopeless romantic. But if I continue, if I had a chance to peep into the universe and I learned that the women, if I choose to continue dealing with women, that they're going to be anywhere similar to practically the same of the females that I've had to deal with in the past, I'll just stay in monk mode, cause believe take it from a quiet, shy introvert as myself. Take it from someone like me who hasn't had, who's had a few, but not too many romantic experiences, unfortunately, because of the gene pool, the cesspool that was surrounding me. We're talking about a city that's third in the nation in poverty, third in the nation in crime, and reached a homicide rate of 326 last year. So take it from someone like me. Bitches ain't shit. I mean, I'm just gonna call it what it is. Especially American women. I mean, so I'm gonna just leave that where I found it. But I've been seriously considering um my house back in Memphis, and not necessarily my house, my dad's house, because the mortgage is in his name and whatnot, and I'm pretty sure he's already well past the 30-year lease, or however long it was. But with this job and the earning potential that comes with it, I've been seriously considering. I had been seriously considering, taking some of that money and putting it into the house to pay off the rest of the mortgage, so that the house would pretty much be paid off, and it would be signed over to me. Well, in other words, it probably wouldn't be signed over to me, because I know the whole deal. If it was signed over to me, then the whole mortgage is renewed, and that's another 30-year mortgage that I would have to devote. And of course, as y'all can guess, I'm not trying to spend 30 years paying on any kind of real estate property in Memphis, Tennessee, of all places. That's why I was thinking if I could just pay off the remainder of my dad's mortgage, and he just basically renders the house to me, even if it's in his name, suppose he just lends it over to me as some sort of inheritance, I guess, some to that extent. Well, I seriously considered that, and I had to renege that, because the thing about the pros to that would be, if anything goes, if anything gets down or goes down here, during my time here in Colorado, I always have something to fall back on. I always have a house, so that I'm never homeless. I'll just have to find a way to get back to Memphis, and I'll be quote unquote, I don't know about, I was about to say home, safe home. Well, safe, I'm not too, I mean, I probably have to renege on that safe part. We can't on safe, knowing Memphis, hell. But I had to seriously reconsider that, because one, I don't know how much is left of the mortgage to pay off, Like I said, I don't have. It's not even a matter of money. It's a matter of time, as far as as far as how long it would take to pay off the remainder of the mortgage. With it already being some 30 plus years that my dad's been paying on this house. And two, look at where I'd be situated. I would be right back in the city that I literally had to escape from. And that's when it finally hit me. It doesn't make any kind of fucking sense. And just think of and there was and it got, these thoughts that were coming in my head, these things that I had to consider, became even in more depth as far as the idiocy of doing what I was considering to do. Now, let's bear this in mind. I graduated college in 2014. Basically the last month or two, December of 2014. So I came into the new year of 2015 a new man, an alumni at the University of Memphis. And naturally, I did what any recent college graduate would do. Some of y'all might be laughing because, and it's okay, you can laugh, because this just goes into not only the ridiculousness of what I had to deal with being in a shine town like Memphis, but a shine thing that I damn near did, and just how asinine it would be to do what I was considering to do. So, to sum things up, from the beginning of 2015 up until maybe the summer of 2017, I dare say up until the summer of 2017, because I dare say before 2017 I just gave the fuck up and said, you know what, fuck it. Those were my last years of looking for a career, because it was career time at this point. And years prior to that, years prior to 2017, 2016, 2015, I must have applied for at least some 200 plus jobs, or at least 200 plus times. And that's what you have to know about the Mid-South. You go into the Mid-South, any fool, and you are a fool if you choose to do this, trying to live in a place like Memphis, your best bet is having your own economic prospects, for lack of better words, having your own streams of income. So now, with that said, I came out here and I found the peace and the prosperity that I managed to have, and it's not much. Some of y'all, like, I'm just sticking to the code of not revealing salary, so I'm not gonna do that. But the fact that the wages that I make, and I'm not necessarily on salary, where, no matter how many hours I work, no, it's not like that. It's, I am hourly based, but, the amount of money that I make is salary worthy. And I accomplished that within 3 years time in Colorado. Now juxtapose that, my 3 years here in Colorado, to my 27 years in Memphis, Tennessee. And after 3 years, something actually comes through that actually brings worth to this degree that for the past at least 6 years I've deemed worthless. Because like I said, yes, I have a degree, but it's not necessarily a very competitive degree. It's not in science, it's not in engineering. It's basically in the humanities, in the liberal arts. A waste of money and a waste of time, according to what everyone has been harping about, that about IT and engineering, which is, and I keep repeating this mantra, which is exactly why I'm going back someday for IT and engineering. But it dawned on me, what sense would it make to invest Colorado dollars, Colorado money into Memphian economy? What sense would that make? Now, since I've been out here, I've seen a litany of Mississippi tags, of Arkansas tags, and knowing that Mississippi is basically the poorest state in the country, one tends to put two and two together as far as how Mississippi manages to keep its economy afloat. And same with Memphis. Well, when you look at all these Memphis-based companies here in this city, like FedEx, AutoZone, and even St. Jude, believe it or not, there's your answer. It's almost as if Colorado is some sort of economic stronghold for these cities and states, in the South, or throughout the South, let alone the Mid-South. And that's how economies like Memphis and economies like cities throughout Mississippi keep afloat, while managing the haves and the have-nots. So it started me thinking, it had me thinking, what sense does it make to invest, to devote Colorado money into a city that literally went out of its way to keep me economically disenfranchised? What sense does that make? And we all know the old saying, if it don't make dollars, it don't make sense. And when I think back to the struggles that I had to endure in Memphis in order to come out here and just to get a piece of the pie, just to encounter this promotion, everything that I had to go through since I've been out here and prior to, just to run across, just to happen upon this earning potential. Not saying that I got it, not saying that I will get it, but just the opportunity to apply for it and actually qualify for the position. How foolish of me would it be to take that earning potential, to take that position and pour money into a society that went out of its way to make sure that I didn't get out of that society into another society that did recognize my credentials and my potential, and gave me the money that I clearly deserve according to the Coloradans, according to their standards. Not to mention the kind of war zone, the kind of crazy land that I would be going back to. I mean, we're talking about Memphis. How stupid of me to even conceive such a thought. And that's where I turn my attention to the community in general. And I want to start, well, let me go ahead and answer the question. Like, I've given y'all enough time as far as my personal answer as far as should we do anything to help the community. A community that we black men who are worth our salt, who are worth half of a damn, literally had to run up out of. And like General Tito was saying, throughout the entirety of our time being there, we were ridiculed by the females. He called them girls. I mean, I'm not really sure if that's, if calling chimpanzees is, calling greater apes is, calling greater apes girls is an appropriate thing to say. I mean, you tell me. I mean, I'm not a biologist yet, but I'll just leave that one for the books. But where you're ridiculed not only by the male species of these creatures, but also by the female species of these creatures unprovoked. The fact that you're there, the fact that you have the same melanin as they do. Even though when it comes to brains and IQ and whatnot, it's we're talking about a community that is so economically downtrodden that it would not sustain you, it will not sustain you. And even if you were foolish enough to come back and try to contribute to it, if anything went south as far as your ability to generate income, it would leave you out in the cold to starve to death. And even if it did, quote unquote, lend a helping hand, it would regard you as a dusty. Because no matter what your lot in life is, no matter what you've done, no matter what you've accomplished, as a black man, to them you would be considered a dusty. You could have an earning potential of not necessarily a six-figure career, but something that's close to six figures. It ain't close enough to them though, and you would be considered a dusty. Yeah. A community where they will deflect and say that it's the white man this, it's the white man that, even though this white man has gentrified just that part of, is so far has done all kinds of white flights and has done all kinds of gentrification policies, to where he doesn't even have a dog in that fight. He's nowhere to be found because he doesn't live there. He's left it up to the boule to deal with it, and they deal with it accordingly. So, if y'all haven't figured it out, my answer to the question, should we help the black community? If you haven't figured it out, it's not yes. If you guessed yes, you're wrong. But guess what? If you guessed no, you're also wrong. So what's the answer then? What's the answer to, I mean, it's like, it's got to be one or the other. It's got to be, what, is it maybe? No, it ain't maybe either. The answer to should we help the black community, mind you, a community that we literally had to escape on some Boys in the Hood type shit. If y'all have ever seen that movie. On some Menace to Society type shit, if you ever seen that movie. We were lucky enough to make it out, unlike Kane and Sharif. On their way out of the hood. and they get killed in the drive-by. And go back to that, calling ourselves trying to contribute? The answer isn't yes. The answer isn't no. The answer is, like I put on General Tito's comment section, the answer isn't yes. The answer isn't no. It's hell to the no. The answer to that question is hell to the no. Hell to the no. And by me being fool enough to take my Colorado spending power, or based here in Colorado, and putting it into a shit pot like Memphis. And I understand why I was thinking, because I have this psychological, for some odd reason and some of y'all can probably relate, that I have this psychological attachment to that house. And I had to realize, it's probably time to just let that house go. Just by the default that it's in that city. A city that I swore to never return to. And if I ever do return to, I'm going to be in and out. And that's where it's situated. So it is what it is. So I'm like, I got to find my own place. And have it out here. You would think I would have conceived such a thought, right? You would think. And here's a little bit of my input. Because I think it goes without saying that hell to the no, we shouldn't help the black community. Because what have these niggas ever done for us? Besides make our lives a living hell while we were stuck there with them. I saw an article this evening where there was this 17-year-old kid in Baltimore who was supposedly on the verge of graduating. But apparently, his teachers, despite the fact that he was failing class after class after class, his teachers had been passing him along. And it's just now that the mother of this child, the single mother of this bastard child in Baltimore, is now expressing what we know as selective outrage. Because, it was a typical sad sob story where she's a mother of three and she's working 3 jobs and things of that nature, things that those of us who have the ability to think would look at that and say, there's so many things in her life could have been done to prevent her from being in the situation that she's in. But that's neither here nor there. This kid had a grade point average so low that it wasn't even a whole number. Let that sink in. And that's not the worst part. Y'all are gonna die after this, after I tell y'all. The worst part about this kid is not his 0.13 grade point average. You think that's bad? The worst part about that kid and his grade point average, as far as his situation, is that he was ranked as basically outranking half the student body of his high school. which basically means, what I'm trying to say is that he has a far better chance at being inducted in the honor society than half his student body, with a 0.13 grade point average. His grade point average is a fucking fraction. It's not a whole number. It's not a 1.0, which would be a D average, a 2.0, which would be a C average, a 3.0, which would be a B average. His grade point average is literally 13%. It's literally 13 of 100. To put it in fraction form, or 13 over 100 in fraction form. And he outranks his student body. He outranks half of his student body at that high school. Is there any kind of salvaging that we can do with that? Absolutely not. Of course not. You know, what comes to mind is I read this. Well, it wasn't even a book, not this guy at least, because there was an actual book that I read, and it was back in Memphis. It was a slave apologetic. Well, it was a book written by a slave apologetic by the name of George Fitzhugh, called "Cannibals All Are Slaves Without Masters." And I mean, this to me is like, it's a self-fulfilling tale as far as what slave owners observed about the Negro. In dealing with these democratic plantations that we see to this day, I mean, you know, we look at books like that, books like Race and IQ. And see, in the community, they would call us the boule, the talented 10th, the educated lame. And, you know, I'm just confused here, because for someone with a grade point average, for a group of people whose average grade point averages don't even reach a whole number, so that at the very least they're passing, so that at the very least they have a D average. Now, you ain't gonna get into no college, because most colleges want you to have at least a 2.0 grade point average. You'll be lucky with those kind of horrible scores if the local community college lets your dumbass in there. But how ad hominem can you get when someone who can't even hold a whole number grade point average is calling you an educated lame? I mean, damn, niggas, I knew it was bad. Trust me. I did 2 years at Wooddale. And prior to that, I did 2 years at Wooddale Junior High. So I practically spent 4 years And truth be said, in one of the last strongholds, at least back then it was, as far as these predominantly black schools, where you did have students who actually gave a damn. You did actually have students back then who were getting inducted in the junior honor society and the regular national honor society, in high school. You had kids who were actually passing, even then, we're talking some 20 years ago, some damn near 20 years ago. And even then, and I remember this vividly, that there were a lot of these kids who were juniors and seniors who were reading on the third grade level. And there was this test that was required of all of us, to pass. And it was called TCAP. It was basically a state assessment test. It wasn't like the SAT or the ACT, but it was just this state assessment test. And it was required for you to pass in order to walk across stage, to graduate high school. Most kids take that in the 9th grade, but you have up until the 12th grade to take that test. The vast majority of the student body in my class, because we were in the optional program, we took it in the 8th grade. We weren't even matriculated in the high school, and we took that test. And most of us passed it only one time. Most of us only took it once, like me. So you fast forward some 20 years later, since I've been out of junior high and high school. Because some 20 years ago, I would have been a freshman. I was a freshman 20 years ago. It just lets you know how fast, life just passes you by. Because I remember 9th grade like it was yesterday. 2001. My adolescence, basically. As I slowly started to grow into, realizing the kind of crazy ass society that I would eventually have to run up out of basically some 15 years later. Because despite the talent, and I had to realize that it's not that I couldn't bring anything to the table to Memphis, it's that Memphis didn't have anything to bring to me except a shitty quality, low-level quality of life. And when you look at the ghettos across this country, you run into the same exact shit. A bunch of shiftless, underachieving, underperforming Negroes who just don't seem to mind wallowing in their feces. Metaphorically speaking. At least I hope so. Shit, knowing y'all. You see, this is where and how the stereotype of being dumb is propagated and perpetuated. I dare say this is why when non-blacks actually deal with Negroes, they tend to be more comfortable with the underscoring, underachieving, low IQ Negroes, because that gives them a sense of superiority. See, when they run into thinkers like me, they get nervous. They get intimidated. They get unease. I noticed that. And you would think it would be the other way around, do you not? Don't you think it would be Pookie and Ray Ray who would make these people nervous? Who would make them, not at ease? I submit to you that It's the other way around. This is a sick, twisted planet we live in. Where the best of us, the best among us, are the threat. But I understand completely why that is. As far as prison industrial complex, academic holocaust, or psycho-academic holocaust. Because, I'm not necessarily a follower of Umar Johnson, but I do have his book, and I definitely believe him when he says what he says. As far as, these schools across America, particularly in urban areas, being, deliberately, set up that in best case scenario where you had, take my school for instance, where, like I said, I'm in the optional program. I'm getting inducted into the junior honor society at the least. They're still finding ways to miseducate you. They're still finding ways to put you in these loopholes so that, you may not be in the regular program with those savages who are, who, like one news reporter said, having test results and test scores similar to that of cavemen, but they're still, putting you through the loop. They're still setting your ass up to fail. Because, let's face it, even in that optional program, the levels in which they test you are just not equivalent to what you would find in a school setting where it's basically predominantly white and Asian. And how do I know this? Because after my 2 years at Wooddale High, I managed to get into White Station High. Memphis City School, at the time Memphis City Schools, it's Shelby County Schools now, most competitive public school in the county. And how competitive? And I feel like I've stated this before, where we had students, particularly in my class, making perfect scores on the ACT, basically having, perfect GPA, like 4.0. Needless to say, getting inducted into the honor society and going to Ivy League schools, having full ride scholarships to Ivy League schools. And I'm glad I bring this up because I remember when I graduated from White Station, I felt cheated when I saw those students and I saw all of the honors that they were being awarded with. Whether it was, this kid going to an Ivy League school, this kid being inducted into the honor society, because I was very big on honor society, and I feel like I sacrificed so much. I sacrificed my status as an honor student, and I sacrificed my ability to get into honor society by transitioning over to a school whose curriculum was completely different. And I'm being thrown things where, they're basically throwing trick questions, things that I just wasn't used to. And even then, I was holding my own. But I felt, even though I managed to graduate from one of the city's most top competitive schools with a 3.0, literally a 3.0 on the dot, I still remember to this day how cheated I felt of not only, these so-called titles, but of just an education, the very thing I went over to White Station for in the first place. I remember that vividly. Now, I may not have been the most, um, necessarily the most intelligent or the brightest of students, but grades and GPA, it literally meant the world to me. I mean, it put me in states of depression as my grades slipped, and as I had no choice, as my grades had no choice to be slipped because, or to slip because, like I said, I was in a whole different environment and a whole different world that I just wasn't, I couldn't keep up the speed. So in other words, where I was making straight A's and A's and B's and occasionally C's every now and then at Wooddale, it was going from that to mostly B's and C's and maybe a few A's. And I mean, you would think years later that I would have forgot about that, but that's some shit that haunts me to this day, and it's basically sent me on the crusade that I've been on at least since I discovered Amazon, which was literally 10 years ago when I broke into like I said, Amazon, and found that all of these different maths and sciences that were presented to me, but we never were tutored in it, we never mastered it. Now it's finally in my hands. I'm finally in a position to do something about mastering trigonometry, mastering calculus, mastering differential equations, high school maths, college level maths. I'm finally in a position to, do something about that. But after years of sacrifice, after years of battling systemic ignorance, what do you think my reward would be if and when I challenge it, defeat it, and I do something as foolhardy as going back to the black community and expressing that I finally defeated, at least one aspect of white supremacy, and that being, the psycho-academic holocaust, or systemic miseducation. It would be, you're an educated lame. You're not about that life. Oh, excuse me. I misspoke. The proper term in that situation, it would be, you ain't about that life. Oh, I'm sorry. It would be, you ain't about that life. Yeah, that's much better. See, back to George Fitz George Fitzhugh and his cannibals all. These were slave apologetics. Men like George Fitzhugh, who basically wrote narratives to basically um justify antebellum slavery. And while I definitely have my disagreements about the shit, especially, there's some things that, based on my interactions with Negroes and the fact that I keep encountering this over and over and over and over again, I keep encountering these bumblehead, bumblelip niggas over and over again. Not men like, it's not every day that I run into men like, who can articulate themselves as professionally as a General Tito, as a Professor Black Truth, or as Jason Black on the Black Authority. It's not every day that I run into brothers like that. But Junebug, Pookie, and Ray Ray, that's a dime a dozen. That's right around the corner, just waiting on you. And rather than referencing George Fitzhugh, I mean, you can always buy his book, Cannibals All the Slaves Without Masters. I'd rather turn my attention to this guy by the name of James Henry Hammond. And I've mentioned this guy before. And James Henry Hammond was a slave owner who had this concept called the mud seal theory. And I've stated this before. It's been a while and I deleted the video. I stated this back in Memphis. And the mud seal theory basically states that in every civilization there must be a group of people who are basically bottom shelf, low tier, lowest of the low, who uphold the higher aspects of society, the higher tenets of that society, for lack of better words. There have to be a group of people who are dumb enough, who are uneducated enough, and who are most certainly willing enough to do that. And in that society, they would belong to what was called the mud seal, just like the mud seal of a house. The mud seal of a house holds the house. It's like, I dare say it serves just as much a purpose as the gutter of the roof, except it's subterranean though. And it, like I said, it upholds the house. And it's crazy that I say that because a few years ago I just saw a house that was being built. Like I literally saw this house built from its foundation, and it's a house. I mean, they're still working on it, but it's the only thing that it needs work on now is interior design, interior decorating, and some real estate agent to put his info on there. But as far as the house itself, it's built. But what's the first thing that I saw when I saw this house being built from its foundation? I saw this crevice, this hole that was basically made of cement, and it was rectangular in shape, and it stood some, I dare say this crevice stood some, give or take 3 feet high, full of cement, and there was a huge hollow at the very bottom, which I'm pretty sure would have served as the basement of this house. People, that was the mud seal. To me, that was a visual of what a mud seal looks like. So when I'm looking at test scores or GPA scores that again aren't even whole numbers, are percentages of 100. 13% of 100, and assuming that 100 in this case would be 1 point.